My name is Claire Montgomery. I was once the wife of Boston's golden boy, the man the whole world admired. But on the night of the gala, when violent contractions ripped through me, I realized I had been poisoned, set up to die on the delivery table. And when he slammed me against the concrete pillar, his hand crushing my throat as he whispered, "Your mother was just practice, and you're nothing but the incubator." I knew this wasn't a marriage. It was an assassination, perfectly staged. Before I share the full, chilling truth, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you've ever overcome the darkest moments. Because trust me, you're going to want to hear what happened next. I should have known something was wrong when Ethan smiled at me that night at the charity gala. Not because of the smile itself, God knows he had perfected that art, but because of the way his fingers tightened around my waist as the photographer approached. Just enough pressure to remind me who was in control. "Mrs. Whitmore, you look radiant tonight," the society reporter gushed, her eyes sparkling with the kind of admiration I'd grown accustomed to. Everyone wanted to be me, Claire Montgomery Whitmore, 29, married to Boston's golden boy tech entrepreneur. The woman who had it all. If only they knew. I shifted slightly in Ethan's grip, my Valentino gown rustling against the marble floor of the Four Seasons ballroom. Around us, Boston's elite mingled with champagne flutes, their laughter echoing off crystal chandeliers. This was our world, or rather, the world I'd hidden from to find real love. Nobody here knew that Montgomery Holdings was my father's empire, that I could buy and sell half the people in this room. I'd kept that secret, wanting someone to love me for me. "Tell them about your latest acquisition, darling," I said, playing my part perfectly. The devoted wife, hanging on every word. Ethan's green eyes lit up, not with warmth, but with that predatory gleam I'd learned to recognize. "We just closed on Pyrotech Industries. Revolutionary AI development." He squeezed my waist again, harder this time. "My brilliant wife here actually suggested the merger strategy." The reporter cooed appropriately, scribbling notes. What she didn't write down was how Ethan had screamed at me for 3 hours when I'd made that suggestion privately, calling me a meddling bitch who should stick to looking pretty, or how he'd presented my idea as his own to the board the next morning. After the reporter left, we glided through the crowd, Ethan's hand never leaving my body, always touching, always controlling. To observers, we must have looked like newlyweds, still in the honeymoon phase. 2 years of marriage, and still inseparable. "The Hendersons are watching," he murmured in my ear, his breath hot against my neck. "Laugh like I said something charming." I obliged, throwing my head back in practiced delight. My mother's pearl earrings caught the light, the only thing of hers I wore anymore. She died when I was 19, a car accident on Route 93. Even now, 10 years later, I missed her wisdom, her strength. "Good girl," Ethan whispered, and my skin crawled. The evening wore on in its usual pattern. Ethan charmed board members and investors while I stood beside him, the perfect accessory. My feet ached in my Louboutins, but I didn't dare shift my weight. He'd notice. He always noticed everything. It wasn't until the final dance that he dropped his bombshell. The band played something slow and romantic, Sinatra maybe, and Ethan pulled me close. To anyone watching, we were the picture of marital bliss. His hand splayed across my lower back, mine resting on his shoulder, my 4-carat diamond catching the light with every movement. "I've scheduled your appointment with Dr. Morrison," he said quietly, his lips barely moving. "What appointment?" I kept my expression serene, though my heart began racing. "For after the baby comes." His hand moved to my still flat stomach. "Only we knew about the pregnancy. 8 weeks along, discovered just days ago. Some minor adjustments. Your nose could be a bit more refined, and we'll discuss augmentation options." The room spun slightly. "Ethan, Shh." He spun me gracefully, then pulled me back. "You'll be perfect then. Truly perfect. The wife I deserve." The words hit me like ice water. After I gave him a child, he wanted to reshape me, like I was a car he could take to the shop for modifications. "Smile, darling," he commanded softly. "The Blackstones are taking photos." I smiled. I always smiled. But inside, something fundamental shifted. A crack in the glass of my perfect life, so small that only I could see it. For now, the signs had always been there. I just chose to interpret them differently. packaging his possessiveness as passion, his control as caring. But standing in our back bay brownstone at 3 a.m., reading the emails on his laptop while he slept upstairs, I couldn't lie to myself anymore. Every grand romantic gesture had been calculated. The hot air balloon proposal, he'd invited a journalist. The surprise anniversary trip to Paris, documented by a professional photographer who just happened to be there. The donation to the children's hospital in my mother's name, a tax write-off that generated great PR. My hands shook as I clicked through folder after folder. Financial documents that made no sense. Shell companies layered upon shell companies. And then I found it. A folder labeled Ascendants. Inside were profiles. Dozens of them. Powerful men across Boston, New York, D.C. Their assets, their weaknesses, their targets. My stomach turned as I recognized some of the women listed as acquisitions. The senator's wife, who died in that skiing accident last year. The pharmaceutical heiress who'd overdosed despite no history of drug use. Was I in here too? I didn't have time to look. Footsteps on the stairs sent me scrambling to close the laptop and slip back into the kitchen. When Ethan appeared in the doorway, I was pouring myself water with deliberately shaking hands. Nightmares again? He asked, his voice deceptively gentle. The baby, I said, touching my stomach. Just nervous, I guess. He crossed to me, and I fought not to flinch as he stroked my hair. My poor darling. Dr. Morrison can prescribe something for that too. Always Dr. Morrison. Always pills and procedures and fixes for problems I didn't have. The next morning, after Ethan left for his office, I did something I'd never done before. I reached out for help, not to friends. Ethan had slowly isolated me from those. Not to family. Dad and I barely spoke since I'd hidden my identity from Ethan. But to a name I'd found in the dark corners of the internet. Noah Reyes, digital forensics specialist. We met at a Starbucks in Cambridge, far from Ethan's usual haunts. Noah looked younger than I'd expected, maybe 25, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and fingers that never stopped moving. Tapping on the table, adjusting his laptop, fidgeting with his phone. Why come to me? He asked after I'd explained what I needed. You could afford the best firms in the city. Because the best firms in the city might be connected to him. I slid a USB drive across the table. I need someone invisible, someone he can't buy or threaten. Noah studied me for a long moment. You know, once we start digging, we can't undo what we find. I know. I thought of the Ascendants folder, of the women labeled as acquisitions. But I need to know what I'm really dealing with. It took Noah 3 days to uncover the first layer. We met again, this time at a park in Somerville. He looked pale, shaken. Your husband isn't just laundering money, he said quietly. He's part of something bigger. The Ascendants. It's like a secret society. They trade in influence, in power, in people. People? Women specifically. Wives, daughters of powerful men. They see it as a game. Acquire, control, and if necessary, he trailed off, but I understood. Eliminate. The word hung between us like a death sentence, which, I was beginning to understand, it might actually be. There's more, Noah said, pulling out a printed photo. Old, slightly faded. I found this in a digitized newspaper archive. Look at the date stamp. I took the photo with trembling hands. It showed my mother at some charity function, smiling that radiant smile I remembered so well. And beside her, a teenage boy with unmistakable green eyes, Ethan, with my mother. 8 years before he'd randomly met me at that investment conference. The park spun around me. I gripped the bench, fighting nausea that had nothing to do with morning sickness. He knew her? Claire, Noah said gently. I think he's been planning this for a very long time. That night, I lay beside my sleeping husband and stared at the ceiling. His breathing was deep, even, peaceful. How could monsters sleep so soundly? As dawn broke through our bedroom windows, painting everything in shades of gold and shadow, I made a decision. I couldn't run, not yet, not without understanding the full scope of what I was facing. But I could prepare. I could gather evidence. I could play the game he didn't know I'd discovered. After all, I was a Montgomery, and Montgomerys didn't just survive. We won. Living with the enemy requires a particular kind of courage. Every morning, I woke up beside Ethan, kissed him goodbye, and pretended my heart wasn't racing with terror. Every evening, I welcomed him home with a smile that felt like broken glass in my mouth. And every night, while he slept, I waged my silent war. The cameras were Noah's idea. Tiny things, no bigger than shirt buttons, hidden in picture frames and air vents. The audio recorders went in his home office, his car, even sewn into the lining of his favorite briefcase. I became a spy in my own home, documenting everything. You're getting better at this, Noah told me during one of our meetings, this time in the basement of a church in Roxbury. Maybe too good. I knew what he meant. The lying came easier now. The performance felt less like acting and more like breathing. Sometimes I wondered if I was becoming too much like Ethan, calculating, deceptive, cold. But then I'd remember what we'd found. The smoking gun came on a Thursday. Ethan was at a conference in New York, giving me rare freedom to search. In a hidden safe behind his Monet reproduction, of course it was fake, just like everything else about him, I found the insurance policies. Not just life insurance, though there was plenty of that, all taken out without my knowledge, but disability insurance, accident insurance, even something called infant mortality insurance that made me want to vomit, all dated within the last month, all with him as sole beneficiary. My hands trembled as I photographed each document. The baby kicked for the first time right then, a tiny flutter that should have been magical. Instead, it felt like a warning. That's when I heard it, a voice from his office. But Ethan was in New York, wasn't he? I crept down the hallway, my heart hammering. The voice was female, young, laughing at something. Through the crack under the door, I could see light, movement. Slowly, carefully, I pushed the door open. She sat at Ethan's desk like she belonged there. Same height as me, same long auburn hair. Even the way she tucked a strand behind her ear. That was my gesture, my nervous habit. She looked up and smiled. You must be Claire. I'm Sophia. The resemblance was unsettling. Not exact, but close enough that in the right light, with the right clothes. Who are you? My voice came out steadier than I felt. Your replacement. She said it so casually, like discussing the weather. Ethan says, I need more practice with your mannerisms, though. The hair thing is good, but I don't quite have your walk yet. The room tilted. I gripped the doorframe, fighting waves of nausea. My replacement? Oh, he hasn't told you? She laughed, a tinkling sound that was almost, but not quite like mine. Men, they never communicate properly. I'm your understudy, so to speak, for after. After what? Her smile widened. After the tragic complications during childbirth, of course. Boston's golden boy, widowed so young, bravely raising his child alone, until he finds love again, with someone who reminds him so much of his dear departed wife. She spun in the chair, my chair, where I sat to pay bills and write thank you notes. Romantic, isn't it? I ran, barely made it to the bathroom before I vomited, my body shaking with the force of it. Sophia, if that was even her real name, didn't follow. I could hear her humming in the office, some tune I recognized but couldn't place. When I finally emerged, she was gone, like a ghost, like a nightmare. But the indent in the leather chair remained, proof I hadn't imagined it all. That night, Noah and I had an emergency meeting in a 24-hour laundromat in Chinatown. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I told him everything, my words tumbling over each other. We need to accelerate our timeline, he said, his face grave. If he's already got a replacement ready. The charity gala, I interrupted. 3 nights from now. All of Boston's elite will be there, including the mayor, the governor. If we're going to expose him, to expose all of them, that's our stage. Noah nodded slowly. Can you hold it together until then? Pretend you don't know? I thought of Sophia sitting in my chair, practicing my life like it was a role in a play. Thought of the insurance policies and the ascendants and all those women who hadn't been as lucky as me to discover the truth in time. I'm in Montgomery, I said, steel in my voice. I can do whatever needs to be done. But as I drove home through Boston's empty streets, one hand protectively over my growing belly, I wondered if that was true. 3 more nights of sleeping beside a man planning my murder. 3 more nights of war. Dr. Morrison's office smelled like vanilla and antiseptic. a combination that would forever make me think of betrayal. I sat on the examination table, my hands folded over my 6-month belly, watching him prepare a syringe. Just a vitamin injection, he said with that practiced smile, for the baby's development. But I'd seen the emails. Noah had hacked Morrison's private server 2 days ago. The vitamin injection was something else entirely. A drug that would cause complications during delivery, untraceable, fatal, making me another tragic statistic. I'd prefer to take oral vitamins, I said carefully. Morrison's smile tightened. Mr. Whitmore specifically requested. I know what my husband requested. I slid off the table, my decision made. But I'm the patient, and I'm saying no. His face went cold. You're making a mistake, Mrs. Whitmore. The only mistake I made was trusting any of you. I left before he could respond, my heart pounding as I walked through the parking garage. Every shadow could hide a threat. Every footstep behind me could be Claire. I spun around. Ethan stood by his Tesla, still in his workout clothes from the gym. He must have been waiting. Dr. Morrison called, he said conversationally. Said you were uncooperative. I don't want injections. The oral vitamins are. The slap came so fast I didn't see it. Pain exploded across my cheek as I stumbled backward, catching myself against a concrete pillar. No one was around. Of course, he'd planned this. You don't get to want. His voice remained terrifyingly calm. You do what you're told. Take what you're given. Play your fucking role. I tasted blood where my teeth had cut my cheek. My role? Like Sophia plays hers? His eyes widened. The first genuine surprise I'd seen from him in months. Then they narrowed dangerously. You've been snooping. I know everything. The words tumbled out, reckless with fury and fear. The ascendants, the insurance policies, my mother. God, Ethan, what did you do to my mother? He moved so fast I couldn't dodge. His hand wrapped around my throat, pressing me against the pillar. Not quite choking, but tight enough to remind me how easy it would be. Your mother was practice, he whispered, just like those other women, building up to the main event. Do you know how long I've planned this? How perfectly I've orchestrated every moment? His free hand went to my belly. This child is my key to Montgomery Holdings. And you're just the incubator. My father will, he laughed, actually laughed. Your father doesn't even know you're in danger. You made sure of that, didn't you? Hiding your identity, pushing him away. You isolated yourself perfectly. I couldn't have planned it better. He was right. God help me. He was right. In trying to find authentic love, I'd cut myself off from the one person who could have protected me. Tomorrow night, Ethan continued, his grip still firm on my throat. The gala. You'll smile. You'll charm. You'll play the devoted wife one last time. And then. He leaned in close, his breath hot on my ear. Then we'll discuss your upcoming delivery. 7 weeks early, I think. Tragic complications. No one will suspect a thing. He released me abruptly. I gasped, gulping air, my hand flying to my throat. Run, and I'll find you, he said, adjusting his gym bag like we'd been discussing the weather. Hide. And innocent people get hurt. Your friend Noah, for instance. Yes, I know about him too. Did you think you were being clever? You're playing checkers, darling. I'm playing chess. He walked away, leaving me shaking against the pillar. But as his Tesla silently pulled away, something hardened inside me. Not fear anymore. Not even anger. Determination. I pulled out my phone with trembling fingers and typed a single message to a number I hadn't used in 2 years. A number I'd sworn I'd never use unless the world was ending. Dad, it's Claire. I need you. The response came within seconds. Where are you? As I typed my location, I felt the baby kick. Strong, insistent, alive. We were going to survive this. Both of us. And Ethan Whitmore was about to learn that he wasn't the only one who could play chess. The game was changing. And the Montgomery family? We'd been playing for generations. The contractions started during the gala's opening speeches. Too early. 7 weeks too early. Just like Ethan had promised. I gripped the edge of our table, my knuckles white against the ivory tablecloth, as Boston's mayor droned on about community philanthropy. You look pale, darling, Ethan murmured, ever the concerned husband. To anyone watching, his hand on mine looked supportive. Only I could feel how his thumb pressed into my pulse point, monitoring my fear. Another contraction rippled through me, stronger, I bit my lip to keep from crying out. Something was wrong. This wasn't natural labor. It was too violent, too sudden. I gasped, then forced a smile as the mayor's wife glanced our way. I need the restroom. Of course. Ethan helped me stand, his performance flawless. Let me assist you. But I wasn't playing anymore. As we passed the code check, I stumbled deliberately, using the momentum to break from his grasp. Get Dr. Morrison, I said loudly enough for others to hear. Something's wrong with the baby. The words rippled through the crowd. Society matrons turned in their seats. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he couldn't break character. Not here, not with hundreds of eyes on us. Call an ambulance, someone shouted. I'll drive her, Ethan said quickly. It'll be faster. No, I gripped a stranger's arm. The prosecutor's wife, I realized. Please, I need an ambulance. I need witnesses. The woman's eyes widened at my words, at my desperation. She might not understand, but she acted. Someone call 911, now. What followed was chaos. EMTs arrived within minutes. Noah's doing, I'd learn later. He'd had them on standby, knowing tonight was high risk. As they loaded me onto a stretcher, I caught Ethan's expression. Pure rage masked by concern. He'd lost control of his perfectly orchestrated scene. The hospital room smelled like fear and disinfectant. Contractions came in waves now, each one stealing my breath. But I wasn't alone. The EMTs had insisted on Mount Sinai instead of Ethan's preferred private hospital. And the attending physician wasn't Morrison. It was Dr. Sarah Chen, whom I'd never met, but who looked at me with knowing eyes. We're going to take care of you, she said quietly, checking my vitals. Both of you. Ethan arrived 20 minutes later, all false panic and husbandly devotion. Darlin', I was so worried. The traffic was... Get out. The words came from the doorway. My father stood there, flanked by two men I recognized as his security team. Richard Montgomery had arrived, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. I said, get out. This is my wife. This is my daughter. Dad's voice could have frozen hell. And you're done here. Ethan's mask finally slipped. For just a moment, I saw the real him. The calculating predator who'd stalked my family for over a decade. Then he smiled, that practiced, perfect smile. Of course, I'll be in the waiting room. He looked at me, and his eyes promised retribution. Call me when our child arrives, darling. After he left, Dad crossed to my bed. I hadn't seen him in 2 years. He looked older, grayer, but his eyes were the same. Sharp, protective, dangerous when needed. I'm sorry, I whispered between contractions. I'm so sorry. I thought I was protecting you by staying away. I thought, shh, he took my hand, gentle despite his power. We'll talk about that later. Right now, let's keep you and my grandchild safe. Dr. Chen worked with quiet efficiency. The blood tests confirm it, she said. You've been poisoned. Oxytocin derivative, designed to induce a violent premature labor. But we can counter it. It'll be rough, but we can stop this. The next hours blurred together. Pain, medication, Dad's hand never leaving mine. At some point, Noah appeared with a laptop and evidence drives. It's all here, he said. Everything. Ethan, the ascendants, all of it. The FBI is moving now. Through the hospital window, I could see police lights in the parking lot. So many lights. He's trying to leave, one of Dad's security reported. Should we... Let the FBI handle it, Dad said. We do this legally. Every step documented. Another contraction hit, stealing my breath. But this one felt different. Final. She's stabilizing, Dr. Chen announced. The baby's safe. You're safe. Outside, I heard shouting. Ethan's voice, loud and angry, then cut short. Through my tears of relief, I saw him being led away in handcuffs. News cameras already rolling. Boston's golden boy exposed at last. It's over, I whispered, exhaustion pulling me under. Dad squeezed my hand. No, sweetheart, it's just beginning. But this time, you're not alone. As sedation took hold, I felt my baby shift inside me. Still safe, still mine. We'd survived the blood night. Now came the harder part, learning to live again. My father operated like a force of nature. While I recovered in a secure wing of Mount Sinai, Richard Montgomery systematically dismantled the empire Ethan had built on lies and blood. The Ascendants had 37 active members, Dad told me 3 days after the arrest, sitting beside my hospital bed with a tablet full of evidence. Senators, judges, CEOs, men who thought they were untouchable. Were? I noticed the past tense. His smile was sharp as winter. The FBI raids started at dawn, synchronized across 12 states. Your friend Noah's evidence was comprehensive. Noah sat in the corner, laptop open, fingers flying across keys. He'd barely left since that night, working with Dad's team to ensure nothing slipped through cracks. The young hacker I'd hired had become something more, a guardian angel, armed with algorithms. Ethan's trying to make a deal, Noah reported without looking up, offering to testify against the others. Let him, Dad said coldly. Let them all turn on each other like the rats they are. But I knew my husband. Former husband, Dad's lawyers had fast-tracked divorce papers. He won't go down easily. He's got contingencies. As if summoned by my words, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Against Dad's protests, I answered. Hello, darling. Ethan's voice, calling from federal custody, still managed to sound controlled. Enjoying your victory? What do you want? To remind you that prison walls can't contain influence. The ascendants have friends, associates, disciples. Did you think we were the only ones? My hand went protectively to my belly. If you threaten my child, our child, he corrected. I still have paternal rights, still have lawyers, still have reach. He paused. Unless what? You know what I want, what I've always wanted. Montgomery Holdings. Sign it over, and I disappear. Fight me, and we'll be connected forever through custody battles, court hearings, constant threat. I looked at Dad, who'd gone very still. He'd built that company from nothing. It was his life's work, his legacy. 24 hours, Ethan continued. Decide what matters more, your father's money or your daughter's safety. The line went dead. He's bluffing, Noah said immediately. He has no leverage from federal prison. But Dad was already standing, phone in hand. Marcus? Yes, it's me. Time to execute Project Scorched Earth. He paused, listening. I don't care about the cost. Burn it all. Dad? He turned to me, and for the first time since I was young, I saw the man who'd clawed his way from nothing to everything, who'd survived boardroom betrayals and hostile takeovers, who'd built an empire not through luck, but through brilliant, ruthless strategy. Ethan wants Montgomery Holdings? His smile was terrifying. He can have it. The trap was elegant in its simplicity. Dad had apparently suspected something like this for years, creating shell companies within shell companies, moving true assets into protected trusts while leaving the visible corporation as an empty crown. Within 18 hours, Montgomery Holdings underwent a controlled demolition. Massive debts suddenly surfaced. All legal, all documented. Environmental lawsuits that had been settled quietly were reopened. SEC investigations that Dad had been cooperating with for months suddenly found irregularities. The company that Ethan had spent over a decade scheming to steal became worthless overnight, toxic even. And the beautiful part? The debts were structured so that any hostile takeover would make the acquirer liable for billions in obligations. You destroyed your own company, I breathed, watching the news coverage from my hospital bed. I destroyed a shell, Dad corrected. The real assets, the ones that matter, have been safe in Luxembourg and Singapore for years. Clean, untouchable, waiting. He squeezed my hand. Companies can be rebuilt, sweetheart. Families can't. The news hit Ethan in federal holding. I heard later that he'd screamed for 3 hours straight, demanding lawyers, demanding deals, demanding anything. But his leverage was gone. Worse, his fellow ascendants blamed him for their exposure. In trying to claim his prize, he'd led authorities straight to their doorsteps. There's more, Noah said quietly, pulling up new files. The other women, the past victims. Your father's team found families, evidence, patterns going back 15 years. It's becoming a RICO case now. Interstate conspiracy, murder for profit. How many? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. 12 confirmed, maybe more. 12 women who hadn't been lucky enough to have a father like mine, who hadn't discovered the truth in time. I thought of my mother, of how young Ethan had been in that photo with her, patient, planning, practicing. He won't see daylight again, Dad promised. None of them will. As if in response to his words, my daughter kicked, strong and healthy despite everything. Still safe, still ours. What will you do now? I asked. Without the company? Dad's smile was genuine this time. What I should have done years ago. spend time with my family, teach my granddaughter about real power, the kind that protects instead of destroys. Outside my window, Boston glittered in the darkness. Somewhere in that maze of lights, federal agents were still making arrests. The Ascendant's dark game was ending. But for us, something new was beginning. The federal courthouse in Boston became my second home over the next 6 months. I sat in the gallery every day, my newborn daughter Amelia sleeping against my chest, as the full horror of the Ascendants unfolded before judge and jury. Ethan had traded his Armani suits for orange jumpsuit, but his arrogance remained intact. He sat straight-backed at the defense table, occasionally catching my eye with looks that promised this wasn't over. Even facing life in prison, he thought he could win. Mrs. Whitmore, excuse me, Ms. Montgomery, the prosecutor corrected herself. Can you identify the man who threatened your life? I stood, shifting Amelia to my hip. That's him, Ethan Whitmore, my ex-husband, the man who murdered my mother. The words rang through the courtroom. Ethan's lawyer objected. The murder charge was separate, still being investigated, but the damage was done. Every juror looked at him differently now. My testimony took 3 days. I detailed everything: the control, the surveillance, the replacement woman. When I described finding Sophia in our home, practicing my life, several jurors visibly shuddered. She said she was my understudy, I explained, my voice steady despite the memories. For after my tragic death in childbirth, the prosecutor introduced evidence of the insurance policies, the poison in my system, Dr. Morrison's cooperation agreement, the case built like a symphony of horror, each note perfectly placed. But it was another witness who truly broke the case open. State your name for the record. Sophia Reeves. The woman I'd found in my home looked smaller now, younger. Without the styled hair and practiced mannerisms, she seemed barely out of college. I was recruited by the Ascendants when I was 19. The story she told chilled the courtroom. A foster kid, aged out of the system, desperate for belonging. The Ascendants found her working at a casino, noticed her resemblance to a senator's wife. They offered her everything: money, training, a purpose. They called us understudies, she whispered. Each of us matched to a target. We learned their voices, their habits, their passwords. When the time came, we'd step into their lives seamlessly. How many understudies were there? At least 20 that I knew of. She glanced at Ethan, fear flickering across her face. They told us we were special, chosen. They never mentioned the women we were replacing would be murdered. The prosecutor showed photos then. Women who died in accidents, suicides, mysterious illnesses. Beside each photo, a second image, their understudy, ready to take their place. Ms. Reeves, why are you testifying today? Sophia looked directly at me. Because Claire Montgomery was kind to me. Even when she found me in her home, knowing why I was there, she didn't attack me. She just looked sad. For me, no one had ever done that before. I remembered that day differently. Remembered being terrified, nauseated, furious. But maybe she'd seen something I hadn't felt. Pity for another woman caught in Ethan's web. The defense tried everything. Character witnesses who painted Ethan as a philanthropist. Experts who questioned the evidence. But Noah and Dad's team had been thorough. Every financial transaction traced. Every communication documented. Every lie exposed. Then came the twist no one expected. On day 12, juror number 7, a middle-aged accountant named Harold Morse, stood suddenly during testimony. I can't do this, he announced. They have my daughter. Chaos. The judge cleared the courtroom. Federal marshals surrounded Morse. Within hours, the story emerged. The Ascendant's reach extended beyond prison walls. Morse's daughter, a college student in Vermont, had been taken 3 days into the trial. If he didn't force a mistrial, she'd disappear forever. This is what they do, I told the replacement juror later, a young woman who looked terrified to be there. They find your weakness and exploit it, but we can't let them win. The FBI found Morse's daughter within 8 hours. Noah's digital tracking, proving invaluable once again. She was shaken but unharmed, held in a warehouse by men who quickly flipped on their employers. More arrests, more trials branching from this one like a poison tree. When closing arguments came, I sat in the front row with Amelia, now 6 months old, and grabbing at my hair. Dad flanked my other side. Noah behind us. My chosen family, forged in crisis. The prosecutor's final words echoed through the silent courtroom. The ascendants believed they were gods among men, that wealth and power gave them the right to trade in human lives. Today, you have the power to prove them wrong. The jury deliberated for 4 days. When they filed back in, I held my breath. On the count of conspiracy to commit murder, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of attempted murder, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of racketeering, guilty, guilty, guilty. 37 counts in total. Ethan didn't react, even as the bailiffs cuffed him. Even as the judge announced he'd be sentenced next month, he maintained that eerie calm. But as they led him out, he looked back at me one last time and smiled. I shivered, holding Amelia tighter. We'd won this battle, but something in that smile said the war wasn't over. 3 years have passed since that smile in the courtroom. 3 years since Ethan Whitmore was sentenced to life without parole. 3 years of learning to breathe again. I'm writing this from my new home in Vermont, a farmhouse with good sightlines and better security systems, where Amelia can run through meadows without fear. She's 3 now, with her father's green eyes, but my spirit. Sometimes I catch her stubbornness, her fierce independence, and think, you'll never be anyone's victim, baby girl. Noah lives in the guest house, still keeping digital watch over our family. He never talks about why he stays, about the wedding ring he wore when we first met, or the pain that drove him to help strangers fight monsters. But I know, the ascendants took someone from him too. Protecting us gives him purpose. Dad visits every weekend, teaching Amelia about business through lemonade stands and teaching me about strength through example. Montgomery Holdings rose from its orchestrated ashes, rebuilt under a new name with transparency at its core. Half our profits go to supporting survivors of domestic abuse and coercive control. Mom would have liked that, but the real story isn't about recovery. It's about what we built from the ruins. The Montgomery Foundation started small, just me telling my story at women's shelters. Then other survivors reached out, women who'd noticed the signs too late, families destroyed by men like Ethan. Within a year, we had chapters in 12 cities, safe houses in 8, and a network of lawyers, therapists, and security experts dedicated to helping women escape. You're giving them what you wished you'd had, Noah told me once, watching me prep for another speech. A lifeline before it's too late. Today, I'm in Boston for a different kind of trial. Not criminal this time. Civil. We're suing the institutions that enabled the ascendants. The country clubs that looked away. The hospitals that falsified records. The law firms that buried complaints. Systemic change requires systemic pressure. Ms. Montgomery, the reporter asks after my testimony, do you ever regret going public? The threats? The exposure? I think of the woman who emailed last week. She'd recognized her husband's behavior in my story and got out before he could execute his plan. I think of Sophia Reeves, who now works with us, helping identify recruitment tactics. I think of the Senate hearings next month, where I'll testify about closing legal loopholes that allowed the ascendants to flourish. Every story we tell makes it harder for the next predator, I answer. Silence is what they count on. Shame is their weapon. So no, I don't regret anything except not speaking sooner. But there are still shadows. Last month, a letter arrived at the foundation. No postmark, no return address. Inside, a photo of Amelia at the playground and 2 words, beautiful girl. The FBI traced it to an ascendant sympathizer, but the message was clear. Ethan has followers, men who see him not as a monster, but as a martyr, imprisoned for pursuing his natural right to power. They lurk in online forums, sharing strategies, nurturing grudges. They're cockroaches, Dad says with disgust. Shine enough light, and they scatter. So we keep shining light. Noah monitors their digital footprints. Dad's security team watches for physical threats. And I keep telling our story, refusing to be silenced by fear. Sometimes, late at night, when Amelia's sleeping and the house is quiet, I think about the woman I was 4 years ago, so desperate for love that I ignored every warning sign, so convinced I could change him with enough devotion. That woman feels like a stranger now, and I mourn her even as I'm grateful for her death, because that's what trauma does. It kills who you were. But if you're lucky, if you have help, if you find your anger and forge it into purpose, You get to choose who you become. I choose to be someone who fights, who protects, who refuses to let men like Ethan win, even from prison cells. Most days, that's enough. Mama, story? Amelia appears in my office doorway, clutching her favorite book. Of course, baby. I close my laptop, leaving the foundation work for tomorrow. As I read to her about brave princesses and defeated dragons, I edit the scary parts. She'll learn about real monsters soon enough. For now, let her believe in happy endings. After all, we're writing our own. The sun sets over the mountains, painting our farmhouse in gold and shadow. Somewhere, Ethan sits in his cell, probably plotting revenge he'll never achieve. Somewhere, women read our story and recognize their own. And here, in this moment, a little girl falls asleep in her mother's arms, safe and loved and free. It's not the ending I imagined when I married my perfect husband in that Boston cathedral. It's better because it's real.